Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and my guest today is Dr. Brad Miller. Brad built a podcast around a question most people would never ask out loud. Can cancer and comedy belong in the same conversation? For Brad, that question is personal. After decades in ministry, he faced his own prostate cancer diagnosis and discovered that humor was not a way to avoid pain, it was a way to move through it. His podcast, Cancer and Comedy, explores that space where fear, grief, resilience, faith, and laughter all collide. But Brad is also the founder of Podcast Independent, where he helps people turn their message into meaningful media. He has produced more than 1,000 podcast episodes and brings a powerful mix of pastoral wisdom, storytelling, humor, and hard-earned life experience to the microphone. Today, we're talking about cancer, comedy, podcasting, resilience, and what it means to keep using your voice with purpose after 60. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Brad, thank you so much for joining me here today on 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm really excited to have you. Now, for some people, they might not have heard of Brad Miller yet. So maybe if you wouldn't mind, just start off by telling us who is Brad Miller and what are you all about?
Hey, thank you, Sebastian. First of all, thanks for having me on your show, man. I love the title of your show, 60 Plus Uncensored, and glad to be a part of what you're up to here, man. So appreciate it. But for me, I am a guy who at one time found myself kind of being a grumpy old man, and then I wanted to change to be a fun grandpa because my two grandchildren at the time said that I was a little grumpy and I needed to be a little more fun. And so we had some fun together, and we did that. And one of the things that precipitated or kind of was a real pivotal moment in that whole process is when I was diagnosed with cancer a little more than 3 years ago, and I had to do something about that in my life. And so I decided to kind of take, okay, what am I about here? I decided to take kind of my background. I spent 43 years as a pastor, and I got a doctoral degree in transformational leadership, but I also found myself liking things like comedians and comic people, and I used a lot of humor in my sermons and things like of the year. And I said I put all those things together and to put together a podcast I call Cancer and Comedy. Cancerandcomedy.com is the website for that. And we look to kind of leverage good things that something called therapeutic humor, which is try to leverage lightness and humor to help people impacted by cancer. They can be the people who have cancer or maybe their caregivers or family members, and help them to have hope and humor in their life. And so that's what I do right now. I retired as a pastor a few years ago. Right, in fact, it was just a month after that, I was flagged for cancer. And so all my plans to go travel with my wife and all that kind of stuff had to be put on hold for a while. And so decided to lean into this story here of helping people to impacted by cancer, I like to call it to heal with hope and humor, or to cope with hope. And we also like to say turn your the grim of a cancer prognosis to the grin of a fulfilled life. So what I'm after is helping people who are kind of stuck or a little bit of that insane stage to navigate cancer or other bad adversities in life to have a fulfilled life to the very end, man. And so that's what I'm all about.
Wow, that's terrific. A lot to unpack there. So I think that getting a cancer diagnosis has to be like at the very tippy top of my list of like things I don't want to have happen to me. My uncle is a doctor. He just retired. But he was saying, Seb, you don't want to get cancer, because he's just seen a lot of it over his 40-year or whatever career. Sure. So can I ask what kind of cancer you were diagnosed with?
Yeah, prostate cancer, and so that comes with its. A lot of people say, men have often heard something like, prostate cancer is something it's for older guys, or it's something you kind of live with till you die, this kind of thing. Well, in my case, it was life-threatening prostate cancer, and I got the diagnosis when I felt like I was pretty young. I was 63 at the time. And had just retired, literally a month before, and was kind of looking forward to fulfilled life, lots of travel and plans. And of course, when you have prostate cancer, that in my case, the doc said, well, if you don't know anything about this, you got about 3 years left in your life. And so they get your attention right there. I had kind of an aggressive mass in my prostate. And then, of course, it comes with it some of the other fun stuff. Some of the other fun stuff that comes with prostate cancer, which includes incontinence and impotence, which are fun things to deal with too. So I wasn't looking forward to any of that stuff, the dying or the impotence or the incontinence. None of that sounded good to me. So yeah, it was it kind of took me from my high or kind of my anticipation of retirement and travel and hang out with my wife and, all that good stuff. And then kind of brought me down really quick to have to recalibrate my life. So I agree with your doctor friend.
My uncle. Yeah, my uncle. So that was only 3 years ago. So, I don't know if you can share some of your cancer journey. Like a lot of people's like chemo, surgery, radiation. Like, did you have to go through any or all of that?
Yes, I did. Actually, for me in particular, for a lot of men with prostate cancer will relate to this. You basically, I was diagnosed, and final diagnosis was in December of 2022, so about 3.5 years ago. And then you basically have three choices. You kind of had sometimes they call it the wait and see, or to see how the mass going to grow. And my doctor was pretty sure in my case, if I waited too long, it was going to be more and more of a problem. So you kind of the wait and see approach, or there's radiation and chemo and that kind of thing, or surgery. There are some other protocols out there, but those are the three main approaches to it. And so in my case, the approach that I decided to take, talking with my wife and my doctor, of course, was to have surgery. So just about 3 years ago, April of 23, so just a little more than 3 years ago, I did have surgery on my prostate, removed my prostate, and so that was a pretty serious matter. And then, that's what I had done, and in my case, thank God, it was pretty successful, and they were able to get it all. And my prognosis since then has been very good, and so I'm feeling healthy, feeling good. And 3 years later, I'm kind of rocking and rolling, writing a book about my experiences, and I'm doing talking to great people like you on podcast, and I've put it together 130 or so episodes of a podcast where I try to help people to navigate cancer. And then I got together with a woman who's my co-host of my podcast, and she is a breast cancer survivor, and so we kind of have that interplay. That I'm a prostate cancer survivor, and she's a breast cancer survivor, so we have that ongoing conversation too, and that's a good thing too. But yes, to answer your question, it was pretty serious. Surgery was my option.
Okay. So, cancer is, I don't know if it's increasingly prevalent, but certainly I hear all the time. I just heard the other day from somebody, this woman I know, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She's 40. My sister-in-law died at 44 from horrible liver cancer. And colon cancer, and she was a vegan, strangely enough, and a health nut, never drank or smoked or anything, and
it happens,
it happens. And so I think that probably a lot of people who are going to be watching this probably themselves have maybe been diagnosed with cancer, and maybe recently. What do you do? I mean, okay, so you talk to your doctor, etc. What's everything else that you do? I mean, how do you cope with a cancer diagnosis?
Well, that's really what I focus my life on here, Seb, is how to cope. I call it cope with hope and humor. And so I feel like a lot of people talk about a coping mechanism. A coping mechanism is, to my way of thinking, is something kind of you do kind of external. A coping mechanism might be, for instance, an exercise or diet plan might be part of that. But some people have a coping mechanism by going and spending a lot of money on a brand new sports car they really can't afford, or they might go, hit a substance, alcohol or something else, a coping mechanism to try to kind of be a crutch on those kind of thing. And I like to take the approach that coping, it should not be so much an external mechanism as kind of as an organism, I call it, or an intrinsic thing that's kind of an internal thing. So that's what I work on. And one of the reasons I kind of leaned into humor a little bit is because I know that's an intrinsic thing that people do that also has a physiological manifestation. When you laugh, or when you hear something funny, or you have a positive attitude, that actually does impact your your body and your psyche and your physiology in some positive ways. It fires up the good hormones, the good dopamines, and it kind of suppresses some of the bad stuff. And I've done my share of research on that kind of thing. But basically, there is a physiological impact when you laugh or you have something humorous or a good feeling in your life. And so to kind of answer your question more directly, I believe that almost everybody, when they get a cancer diagnosis, and cancer, by the way, I believe, Seb, can not only be, physical cancer like I had, but, to kind of, if we think about cancer as something that eats you alive, in the sense of, how cells multiply and that kind of stuff, that are bad news. It can be other things too. It can be, depression or divorce or losing your job or any number of things that kind of send you into a downward spiral. So if anything sends you to a downward spiral, you got to do something about it, or you're going to continue to go down and you're going to meet your demise. And in my ministry of 43 years, I certainly met my share of people who, when bad things happened to them, they went down and they did not recover. They went into depression. Some people just, could not function. But other people, I found in my observation, would turn to family members, their spiritual life, their emotional life, their other things, and they would have a positive outlook on life that really helped them. No matter what their prognosis was, they had more fun in life and things like that. So that, to me, was kind of the beginning of my understanding of how to cope with this kind of a thing. So the way I like to look at it, I call it you kind of go into, when you first have the shock of cancer or some other bad thing happen to you, some other adversity, you go into what I call the 4I period that you have to deal with. And I kind of use the prostate cancer as kind of a metaphor for that. The 4 I's of kind of the process you go through. The first one is insanity. That's the confusion of, that is your mind it's like somebody kicked you in the head. It's like you don't know what to do. You're off your game. You've lost your balance because, I call it the situation where you are reeling in the process when you first get that diagnosis, that kind of thing. In my case, I literally, when I got the phone call from my doctor, my first reaction was to laugh to keep from crying. And I literally had to hand the phone off to my wife, who was crying. And so, because I couldn't really deal with it, the laughter was not healthy. It was, laughter, nervous, just kind of a coping mechanism. It was a dark, it was a coping mechanism in that case. And so the second part of the 4I period, I think, is I kind of used the metaphor of prostate cancer is incontinence. The whole thing about incontinence is you lose control. Okay, in incontinence, you literally lose control, of your bowels and your urine and everything. It doesn't feel good. You don't like that kind of feeling. You are not in control anymore, and it's kind of gross and terrible. And part of this whole cancer thing is you feel like you've lost control of your body. Your body's doing things that, you are not used to doing. So you've lost control. And the third I consider this whole situation is, I call it the impotence stage. And impotence is, of course, for sexuality, it means you can no longer perform sexually, and that is a loss of power, sexual power and things like that. And so in the impotence stage, when you get cancer, it's basically you've lost your power. You've lost your energy. You've lost your physical stamina, other things of that nature. And you don't like that either. And so when you have those 3 I's that happen, I believe they can lead you to what the kind of the almost the worst one is what I call insolence, which you become just kind of mad at the world and mad at other people because all this bad stuff is happening to you, and you become selfish and self-centered. And so that's where you can lead, and that's the downward spiral that you go to if you allow cancer or these other bad things to take control. So the question is, do you want to stay there or do you want to do something about it? Now, so I think that's where you're going with this here. That's what happened to me. And I think my research shows and my personal experiences show that a lot of people go through some form of that. Let me ask you, in your life, if you ever had something bad happen to you, Seb, where you kind of like had a moment where you kind of felt confused or out of control? Has that ever been the case for you or people that you know?
I have led a charmed life, and I say that nothing bad has ever really happened to me. To be honest, I mean, like I've known some people have died. I've never been to a hospital. I've never broken a bone. I mean, I guess the most serious health crisis I had was I had pneumonia last year, and that wasn't even painful. It was just like like no energy for a month and stayed in bed more or less. But no, I can't say I have. I'm just watching my sister-in-law die of cancer. That was obviously horrible. And then my aunt actually got Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, and she died like 10, 12 years ago. And that was also horrible to witness. But, I've been blessed to have, very little of that around me or in my own personal life.
Well, good. That's awesome. That's good for you. And I think that's what a lot happens to a lot of people. They kind of live a life where they're kind of cruising along and things are going okay, and then boom, something bad happens to them. Adversity happens. In your case, you observed it in your family and others as well, and that's a part of it too. When it's part of your life, it's a family member or somebody you co-worker, any number of things like that. So the question is, what do you do about it? In my case, I kind of had to have a shock to my system to get out of my funk, because I was kind of a grumpy old man, kind of a grumpy old. I was feeling old. I was only 62 or 60. I turned 63, and was looking forward to a long retirement and all kinds of fun stuff. And instead, I had to take basically several months to a year out of my life to deal with this. And so, in my case, I got diagnosed with cancer, Seb, literally 2 days after Christmas of 2022, and so that was a big Christmas thing as well. But a week or so later, my wife and I got together with our two granddaughters, who at that time were 5 and 2 years old. And it was kind of our turn to do kind of Grandma and Grandpa's day away with the granddaughters while my wife and her husband went out shopping or did something. They had their time together. So we took them out. We did some fun stuff with them. We went to arcades and all that kind of stuff, did some fun stuff with them. And then we ended up at a McDonald's restaurant to get, their favorite thing was Happy Meals for the girls. And I was feeling a funk that whole day. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was kind of slumped over. I was kind of feeling bad. And I'm normally known as kind of, with my grandkids and other people, I tell dumb jokes and I try to cut up and things like that, and I'm the dad joke guy and that kind of thing. But I was with them and I was feeling a funk all day, and I wasn't feeling really good because I knew I was facing life-threatening situation or surgery or something of that nature. All that was yet to be determined. And but I got together with him. We were at a McDonald's restaurant, and Christmas music is playing, decorations. There's all the kinds of kids with parents or kids around there, and they're eating their chicken nuggets and stuff. And then all of a sudden, these two girls I said something silly or dumb, and they pointed at me and they started to have a giggle fit. Two little girls, 5 and 2. Had just a flat-out giggle fit where they could not stop laughing, and they were giggling, and pretty soon it got me laughing and my wife laughing, and pretty soon everybody at the whole McDonald's was laughing and giggling about whatever they were giggling. Just had a giggle fit going on. And then one of my granddaughters said to me at that time, she pointed right at me and she said, "Grandpa, you're my fun grandpa." And I said, hey, Seb, guess what? I kind of had a moment right then, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be the grumpy old man that I came in this place with. I want to be the fun grandpa. And what happened to me, Seb, at that moment, I can only describe as kind of a ethereal, spiritual experience. I had a vision right then, those two little girls, 5 and 2 years old. I kind of had a vision. They're just eating they're just having fun and giggling and having their chicken nuggets and what have you, and their Happy Meals. But I had a vision of those two little girls about 20 years in the future when they are getting ready to either get married or graduate from college or something like that. And I could see them, and I said, right then and right there, I said, Brad, you are going to do everything you can to be a part of their life when they're when they're young women going through those things, and I'm going to do whatever I can to not only be alive and be a part of their life, but to be engaged with their life, and so I can live up to what my one granddaughter, my 5-year-old, said at that time. be the fun grandpa. I want to be the fun grandpa, not only, when they're 5 and 2, but 20 years in the future. And so that's been my mission in life, man, ever since. And I had that vision of them. And so I had a transition right then, man. I really did. Because that was the moment I said, okay, we're going to get on with this. I'm going to live my life to the fullest, no matter what that means, and have some fun doing it, and be a contributor to the lives of other people, including my own granddaughters, but also other people, because I want to serve other people and fulfill my life in the process. So that what led me eventually to doing the medical things I had to do, get surgery and get all that involved with that. And then I did family events and so on, was involved with those. But I also decided at that point, okay, one of the things I do like to do is podcasting, because I've had a history of podcasting and radio before that. And I said, I'm going to create a podcast that has to do with helping people kind of like me, who are kind of stuck, or they've had this bad experience, had this adversity thing, and I'm going to help them to navigate this insane factor, this I things, in order to get through this, to live the fulfilled life. Because I believe there's a lot of people out there, Seb, who are kind of in this insane phase, who then what they're looking for is people who can help give them the roadmap or the GPS or the process. And so I decided to become a student of coping, helping people cope with hope and humor, and to help them do that. And one of the ways to do that is by kind of leaning into the things that I knew about, which was my 43 years of ministry. I have transformational leadership, which is what I did my academic studies in, and then humor, and then also in the frame and the package it came in was podcasting and things like that. So I decided to lean into all that and to help share that with others. That's what I've been doing ever since. A couple months later, I launched the podcast, and away we went. And I've had a lot of opportunities ever since then to speak about this at various groups and to have a lot of fun with it, and to share, like I said, 130 episodes and reach a lot of people around the world with this message of healing with hope and humor. And I love it. I have a lot of fun doing it. And guess what? It's helped me to suppress that grumpy old man grandpa and to actually be the fun grandpa who makes a contribution, not only to my granddaughters, but to other people. So that's what I'm all about. So I hope it helps you give you a little better handle where I was at or not and where I'm going.
Right on, fun grandpa. That's awesome. I mean, we all want to have a purpose, especially people who are 60 plus, because a lot of people, they come and they hit 60, they don't have cancer or whatever, but they feel adrift. They feel without purpose, right? They're like, what do I do now, right? And a lot of them, unfortunately, spiral down into lethargy, and then they get sick, and then they die, right? And having drained away the last 10 or 15 years of their lives, really just not doing anything at all, and just kind of rudderless. And so it's kind of interesting way that you found, your next big thing, or your next thing to give meaning and purpose to your life. And I love how you said you want to be of service to people, because I think that's where the most fulfilling lives come from, is being of service to other people. And you've been of service to other people your whole life, because you've been a pastor for 43 years. And I'm wondering, what does your experience as a pastor, how did that inform your cancer diagnosis?
Man, I'm so glad you asked that. I took my cues and my clues from people I met in my ministry, some with cancer, other bad things, people in health-related things, divorces, bankruptcies, mental health issues, suicide ideation, drug dependence, bad situations. And I took my cues from, okay, I want to learn from the people who handled it well and the people who didn't handle it so well. One of the things I remember, one very clear situation I remember very clearly, was I dealt with two older people. This is 20 plus years ago now. And they both had cancer, or both had severe lung cancer type of things, COPD and that type of thing. One person was in the hospital. I was called in I was a volunteer chaplain at the hospital. So I didn't really know this person very well. But I was called in, and I remember they were scared to death of dying. They were scared to death of going to hell. They were scared to death. They didn't know what was going to happen to them, and they could barely breathe. And I just remember the absolute terrified fear in their face and in their whole countenance. And I did what I could, but I know basically they died in the throes of fear and terror. week or two later, I'm dealing with a woman in my church who'd been a woman of faith and involved with the church her whole life. And I went to visit her, and she was surrounded by family and friends in her home life. And even though she could hard to breathe and other things like that, and just kind of suffering physically, but she had a smile on her face and delight in her life because her family was around her. There was some singing, there were some other things happening, and there was delight. And I said, okay, both these people had a similar ailment, as it were, but one person passed away with a fulfilled life with family and friends and things. The other person died alone in fear. I want to help people to manage and to navigate the fear in order to have delight in their life, no matter how long they live or are here with us, to live a full life and to finish strong. That's what I'm all about. So I've seen that in my ministry. That's just one indicator of that. So I took that into what I do now and the teaching I do as I help people with what I call the ACTS plan, ACTS plan, as I help them to then actually develop a plan to move through their life, move through their situation, to navigate their cancer or their other adversity in order to have a fulfilled life. So I've learned that from the people that I encountered in my ministry, in my own family life. My own dad had cancer. Other people in my life have had to deal with that. How people deal with it, I brought that to bear, and then my own life as well. When I got sick, my granddaughter's part of that story to help me to get out of my own funk. But it has to do with choosing, Seb, this is the key thing, choosing to live a fulfilled life, and to know that if you don't do that, then you're going to have a life that's going to be, what the Bible says in Proverbs 17:22, you're going to have a crushed spirit. It's one of the key verses of scripture I use is Proverbs 17:22, which says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." I've seen a lot of people crush spirit, but I've also seen people who have had delight in their life and a cheerful heart. And I want to help people move from that crushed spirit to the life of cheer and fulfillment.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the tough one, right? Because I want to say, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I don't know, all the years blend together. I slipped and fell right around Christmas time, and I was taking out the garbage, and I slipped and fell on my driveway. And I live in beautiful sunny California. It was just water that I slipped on, essentially, right? I don't know what it was, but I slipped and I fell, and I put my elbow down to break my fall, and it was like a soft tissue injury or something like that. I was basically in pain for weeks, maybe months. I forget how long it was, but for a long time I hurt, and it really took the piss out of me, as they say, probably in England or wherever they say that, right? I was just I want to say depressed, right? I could still do my job kind of, but I certainly had lost a spring in my step. I just felt down. And that experience makes me worry that if I were to get cancer or something like that, I might not handle it very well, because just that one little setback, it was painful but not life-threatening, that really had a bad effect on me. So when you talk about people with a crushed spirit, I see myself in that, and I wonder how do you pick yourself up when you are looking at what could turn out to be a terminal diagnosis. And even if it's not terminal, there's going to be a lot of hard steps to get to the other side of that. How do you help people find that light within themselves to supersede that? Is it just telling jokes?
Well, that's only one piece of it. I am so glad, Seb, that you went there. Because that is the key thing that I'm trying to do here. Because a lot of people are then searching for, okay, I'm in this state. I've been diagnosed with cancer, or some other bad thing has happened to me. What do I do now? What do I do now that I'm in this state? Because some people have had this situation like you're describing. They've fallen and they can't get up, so to speak. They've fallen and they've been crushed this kind of thing, and they do. But I need some tips. I need some direction. I need some strategy moving forward. A lot of people don't have it. And what I've also found is sometimes the systems that are in place are inadequate to help people do this. For instance, when you deal with the medical world, which is great for medicine and for healing and for wholeness that way, it doesn't always deal as effectively with the emotional situation or helping people to navigate one step or another on the emotional, spiritual, interpersonal levels. And so that's exactly what I tried to do. And I thought this through. This is where kind of my academic training in transformational leadership, because I was trained on how to take an organization like a church or some organization and help them to kind of sort out what they were all about in order to transform, in order to be effective moving forward. So an organization is not effective moving forward unless the individuals, the people in it, are also effective in terms of making some transformation themselves. So I've applied what I've learned academically, my ministry experience, as you referred to earlier, and kind of threw in the spice of humor here, because I think it makes it more fun and makes it more of a palatable way of doing this. So let me kind of, if you're okay with it, Seb, I just kind of let I wrote out then what I wanted to do for myself, and that's what I teach other people. I call it the Acts Pact Plan. And that's what I do now. That's what I teach. That's what I'm writing my book about, this Acts Pact. And so that's exactly what you're asking here. This is the plan moving forward for people. Do you mind if I
let's hear it.
kind of unpack that a little bit? It's the acronym ACTS, ACTS. And so the A in the word acts is to take action. And I really believe, Seb, nothing really happens until you kind of get off your butt and do something. And that can be as simple as making a phone call. In my case, it meant calling up the doc and saying, okay, let's move forward with the treatment plan. Because I was debating, in my case, kind of doing the wait and see approach. And my wife didn't want me to do that, but I was debating that. So you got to get off your butt and do something. You got to take action. That's your physical health. That is your mental health. That is your interpersonal health. That is these type of things. And you got to take action. So in my case, it was going to see the doctor and getting a medical plan together. And then it was also the part where I decided I'm going to take these three factors that I had in my life, my ministry experience, my academic training, and my love of humor, and kind of put them together. And what was I going to do and take action with that? Because I knew a part of my process, if I was going to meet my goal, my vision of being around for my granddaughter's wedding or graduations, I had to do something. So it's action. I can't sit on my butt and watch Price is Right, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to come to me. So action. Okay, you got that? The A is action. The C in the word, so that's the first thing I try to train people is find an act to do, an actual physical action. The C is to connect. And I put the connection piece to two forms of connection. One is spiritual or higher power connection, depending on your system of belief. You could be a religious thing, it could be a spiritual thing, or whatever. In my case, as I mentioned, I believe that's one piece of the connection. I call it the vertical as well. And in my particular case, I had kind of got back into my Bible study. I got involved with the church. I just retired as a pastor, so I didn't have a church either. So I decided, and I went several months without a church, several months of kind of mad at God about the whole deal. I got back into a church and was able to be helpful there. And then I found some scriptures that helped me, including the one I just mentioned there, and became more engaged that way. So it's a spiritual, higher plane type of thing. But that's only one piece of the connection. So there's also the other piece of the connection is with other people. This is kind of the emotional, this is the interpersonal part of what you need. The first place I started was with my wife. My wife is tremendously helpful with me. My wife, Debbie, she pushed me and prodded me and encouraged me and did everything she needed there. I also went to my family. I have 3 adult children, and including my own grandchildren, as I mentioned earlier, part of that process too. I started to get connected with friends. I had some friends, some of them had been, dealt with prostate cancer. Got reconnected with some friends, and then I got connected with some other groups of people who dealt with, kind of dealing with cancer online and otherwise. But this is the connection you have to make with other people, and you got to be intentional about connection, just with both the spiritual and in the interpersonal, the horizontal, I call it. So you can't do this alone. This is not a solo thing. Connection. All right. So that's the A is action, the C is connection, the T is the think. It's the cognitive piece. You can't do this without thinking it through, in my opinion. And I think this is where you got to apply then, yourself and develop a strategy. So you develop, in my case, it's a medical strategy. You met with the doctors and so on about the surgery and the recovery process. That's a piece of it. But also what I'm going to do spiritually, emotionally with other people. That has to do with the other aspects of the healing process. That included things like diet and exercise. I ended up losing a bunch of weight in the whole process. I got my act together physically. I got my diabetes under control quite a bit better. That was all part of the strategy, but that is applying the mental side. And that goes, Seb, to things like habits, processes, practices, things you do on a day-to-day basis, some of the boring stuff. But you got to then use your head to do that. It's the cognitive piece. And then the S, so it's A for action, C for connection, T to think strategically, and the S is the emotional bond to serve others with love. Okay, I decided that I'm going to put in my mind's eye other people kind of like me, kind of those lost people in that insane period, and I wanted to serve them. So I have my mind's eye, I call him Bud, the guy who's kind of got confused in life. He's kind of my avatar. He's rolling along his life. Things are cooking pretty good, and then he gets a cancer diagnosis that throws him off his game, and he needs a little help, a little direction. So I went to look to serve Bud and Bonnie. That's the couple there who I kind of, my mind's eye, how can I serve them with love? And so the serving with love, that is, when I give back to the world, means I'm doing things for other people. So that's where the podcasts come into play. I want to serve people with what I teach in my podcast. I also done some other things. I speak at conferences on therapeutic humor. I'm in connection with local hospitals and things like this to try to be helpful in this area. I have put on a cancer and comedy benefit event where I brought in a comedian who is a prostate cancer survivor himself and had a great comedy routine about this. I've been on local TV and things like this where I look to serve the community. So that's the ACTS. A for action, C to connect, T to think, S to serve others with love. And then I also call it I seal it what I call the pact. A pact is a promise that you make, and I help people in the teaching that I do to write out a pact or a promise to themselves, a commitment, a covenant, if you will. And it's to use about a paragraph long or so, and where I help them to do that, where they make a promise to themselves and to others, and I have them, I signed off on my pact that I did for myself, help them to do that too, to seal it with that, so to make a promise to yourself. So that's the process I basically teach to help people to navigate the confusion they're in to get to a better place. So that's what I do, man.
So you said you teach. So are you talking on your podcast you teach, or at the seminars you do, or is there a classroom, or what do you mean you teach?
Yeah, well, I teach on the podcast. I teach basically this ACTS pact I've just outlined here. I have definitely, I've spoken on several occasions at seminars. I spoke at podcasting conferences. I host my own podcasting conference, and I teach these basic concepts because I think they can apply to other areas of life as well. But certainly I spoke at a conference about therapeutic humor just about a year ago when I outlined this process here to a bunch of people who were actual professional therapists and so on, and they resonated with this as well. So I taught online, both in my podcast, and I have a 5-part private podcast I make available to people, which teaches this. And then I'm writing a book and have a course and an online membership place where people are going to be able to connect with this. That's all being launched later on this summer into fall. My book should come out by the end of the year. The name of my book is Dancing at My Granddaughter's Wedding, which is basically outlining this ACTS process that I mentioned here.
All right. So you're building like a whole online community, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal, and then to develop a whole community of people who have this same resonance that I'm not done with my life yet. I just because I'm in my 60s, some people turn off life and they retire. They retire and they go, sit and watch Price is Right, whatever. That wouldn't have been me anyhow. But but I'm here to help people to navigate this and have a fulfilled life, have a life to the full and to finish strong, whatever that means, however long that is. And I'm here to help people do that, to live full, finish strong. That's kind of one of my models in life.
Well, that's what we are all about here at 60 Plus Uncensored. We are, me basically. I reject that narrative that, the last decades of your life means like decay, boring, slowing down, bad health, right? It doesn't really have to mean any of that. It can be, they can't, actually, many people report that the 60s are the best decade of their lives. And people are happier in their 70s than they are in their 20s, generally speaking, right? So, there's a lot to be said for that time period of your life. And I talk to a lot of people here on 60 Plus Uncensored who are just crushing it, right? They're crushing it in their 60s and their 70s and their 80s. I haven't had a 90-year-old on yet, but I've had, a lot of really remarkable people who are out there doing big things, and there's really no reason why you can't, especially nowadays with like the technology that is available to us. You can really do some pretty cool stuff for not a lot of money and connect with people, from all walks of life and all corners of the globe. So
absolutely, yeah.
That is really cool what you are doing there. I want to go check some more of that out. And I know that you are, you mentioned that you talking about step T, right? Think, the strategize. You mentioned like diet and exercise, right? As one of the things that you did. You lost a bunch of weight. So what does that look like? How have you changed your lifestyle in the last 3 years to get over cancer and then to continue to lead a healthy life?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because that's such an important part of it. Basically, I leaned in kind of diet-wise. I leaned to basically a keto carnivore approach to my diet. Okay, that's what I felt like I could live with. My wife actually is a complete vegetarian, so we have an interesting time if we go out to eat or whatever. But basically, it's cutting out carbs is a big part of it. Whatever you do, I think she cuts out carbs in her vegetarian diet. I cut out a lot of carbs in my keto carnivore style diet, and that also makes it kind of simple for me, because when I started looking at my diet plan, which was a lot of hostess ho-hos and things like that back in the day, and and that kind of, and a lot of pizza and other that kind of stuff. I just realized
yum, yum.
that this wasn't. Yeah, I still love it, man, but this wasn't going to cut it anymore, and so I needed to make those changes. And so I ended up losing weight-wise. It's fluctuated a little bit, but I've lost about 50 pounds since I started this whole process, and it's gone pretty well in that regard. I'm not not super rigid. Like this weekend, we got some birthday things going on. I'll have cake and whatnot for the birthday celebration we have around our house. But I have been more disciplined about that. And I've also been much more disciplined. My wife helps us with this a lot, on pretty much a daily exercise routine. And I just made it a part of my life. I go to my local gym between 7 and 7:30 in the morning. I do 30 to 50 minutes on a treadmill, and I have a weightlifting routine I do most mornings. And then in the afternoon or evening, my wife and I like to walk a wooded trail near us for 1 mile to 2 miles. And so that's pretty much routine. A lot of walking. I don't do a lot of, even the weightlifting things, I don't do a lot of high stress stuff. I don't, a long time ago, I used to ride my bike, when I was a pretty avid biker, would do, these 30, 50 mile bike rides, and occasionally century rides, 100 miles. that kind of thing. I don't do that kind of thing anymore. That's just not where I'm at. I'd have more of a rigid, this is a routine. This has to do, love what you said, the thinking, the strategy, a long-term strategy, and it has to do with a vision looking forward and the application of it on a daily basis. If I'm going to get to my granddaughter's wedding 20 years from now, then I got to do the daily thing on the treadmill things today. But that's a little bit my diet and exercise regimen right there.
Right. So you mentioned no carb, and I read this. I talk about this book frequently. Is How to Grow a Whole New Body by Dr. Alberto Villoldo, and he said many interesting things in the book, but one of them is you don't actually need carbs. Like, your body does not need carbs to function whatsoever.
Right.
You can live just fine with having zero carbs, and that's impossible because there are carbs everywhere. But I want to ask you this, because you are a cancer survivor. There's a certain school of thought out there that says, like, all this sugar that we're eating all the time, and carbs basically are sugar, they're broken down into sugars in your body, is what really is causing all this prevalence of cancer that we're seeing right now. What do you know about that?
I would just put it this way. Yeah, I kind of done the Dr. Google and WebMD stuff, and did a lot of study on this, and I would not. I have a doctoral degree, but it's not an MD. I have a doctor of ministry, so I always try to say to people, don't look to me for any medical advice, but I would not be surprised at all about the relation between sugar and cancer. And I do know that there have been a lot of people, when they have cut out sugar, either by kind of a keto carnivore style diet, or even a vegetarian vegan diet like my wife has done, they've had some pretty significant health turnarounds, and myself included, my wife included as well. And so I would not be surprised at all. I don't want to say for sure, but I think the evidence is pretty compelling.
Yeah, you know what I tell people? I mean, I tell people a lot of things, but about like sugar. Like, for example, you're having a birthday cake this weekend, right? Like, I think that back in the olden days, like 100 years ago, they would call that a treat, right? Like, we're going to have a treat, right? Like, and you gave your horse sugar cubes as a treat. You wouldn't feed your horse a steady diet of sugar cubes, would you? No, of course not. What's that old one, the Jack LaLanne? You wouldn't wake up in the morning and give your dog a cigarette and drop in a donut. So
Yeah.
why do you do that to yourself? So I think, hey, everything in moderation. Yeah, as a treat, once in a while, a slice of cake isn't going to kill you, but I think that in the American diet, right, there's just so much sugar, and like, obviously increased obesity, which comes largely from sugar, probably, and a sedentary lifestyle are got to be huge contributors to cancer. So I just wanted to ask you about that, what your opinion was, because you've been through this, and I'm sure you spent a lot of nights Googling and Wikipediaing and.
There, you see some books on the shelf behind me there, and a bunch of them are diet and health related, because I just dug into that world, and so I take it you have as well. And so, I think the evidence is pretty compelling. Whatever you do, cut out carbs. I think if you do that alone, that's going to help a lot.
Right. Yeah, that'll help a whole lot. All right. Now, I want to talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, is podcasting. So, you're like a serious podcaster. I mean, you have a podcaster conference. I mean, like, podcasting is very in fashion these days, but you sound like you're kind of a titan of podcasting. So tell me about your podcasting experience, and what makes a good podcast, and why Joe Blow, like me or you or anybody, might want to have one.
Well, I appreciate that question a lot. I have 2 or 3 passions in my life. My family is one, though cancer, helping people navigate cancer, the other. But I believe in what I call meaningful media. And for me, podcasting is a great way to doing that. Now, I actually have a background also in radio. So I was involved with radio, and I'm 67 years old right now, but I go back to radio all the way back to high school days, when I was on the high school radio show and that kind of stuff. I did it in college, whatever small town I landed at when I'm in my ministry or whatever, or big city. I would go to the local radio station and try to do something there, because I enjoyed that. About 15 years or so ago, in 2012, this thing called podcasting came around, and I was interested in it, and I decided I want to check it out. So at that time, my son was junior in high school, and he was the captain of his high school lacrosse team. So I got interested, put together a podcast for his lacrosse team, interviewing the players and coaches and that kind of thing. Had some fun with it. I've leaned into it ever since. So I've had, over the course since 2012, I've had, 6 or 7 different podcasts that I've done and keep going. I do a daily Bible podcast. I do my weekly cancer-related one that I help produce podcasts for other people as well. It's kind of part of my side gig. I make a little extra money doing that. And then I've found myself then being invited to speak at podcasting conferences and been able to do that. And also I host my own podcasting conference here in my local community where I've had people come from many states away to be a part of the learning about what that takes. So here's why, to get to your point here, I think podcasting, which is a medium where you can do audio and or video to put your message out there. And in my case, I think this is a great way to get your passion out there. In my case, I've mentioned my passion, about the cancer. I mentioned my passion. I do a daily Bible podcast, which I have over 1,200 episodes on my daily Bible podcast, which I'm able to kind of get my Jones on a little bit there about my preaching and teaching, which I no longer do in a church setting. But I do that, and then I help others. And I also do, believe it or not, Seb, I also, at Christmas time, I do a Santa Claus podcast because my granddaughter said I look like Santa Claus. And other times, when it's Christmas time, I let my beard grow out a little bit. So I do a daily podcast between Thanksgiving and Christmas where I'm Santa Claus and have a lot of fun with that. And I basically have people all around the world who plug into those things. People around the world can hear you and be impacted by your passion. And then it gives me a purpose in life, and it helps bring some purposefulness to other people's lives in doing so. So it's having a passion to get the word out there. And then I also believe that can give you, for those of us who choose to lean that way, it can lead to some sensibility. People want to build a business around that, they can. I've done it more as a passion project, but I certainly have been able, I make a lot more money now than I ever thought I would in podcasting in terms of what I do right now, and it turns out to be a good thing. But you got to have a passion to do it. You got to have a purpose to do it. In my case, I call my little business I run called Meaningful Media because I want to put out meaningful podcast episodes out there that can help change people's lives. Because what I'm really all about, when it comes down to it, Seb, is life transformation. I got my doctoral degree in transformation leadership. So I'm looking at people to take people from a bad state, whatever it is. It could be cancer. It could be spiritually bereft. It can be divorce. It can be depression. Death. It can be death, mourning, grief, all those things, and help them get to a better state. In fact, I call it the 5 Ds of adversity. I hope people get through. Those real quickly are first D is depression. That's mental health stuff. The second D is divorce. That could be relationship issues of any kind. Disease, health, like we've talked about, cancer. Debt, which is financial stuff, a huge area of life where people get messed up. And then death, which is mourning and grief and that type of thing. And people get stuck on those areas, and I hope people get through it. And one of the great ways that I can do that and get my message out to other people like your audience, and you have a fantastic audience here and fantastic message you're doing to help people over 60 to navigate this life, is to put it out in a podcast. So more people, I'll give you just a quick example. One of the ways I look at it, I spent 43 years of ministry. The largest church I served, we had an average attendance of about 500 people. And then most of the churches I served averaged around 100 folks. So 100 folks a week that I could have some impact on, with a message of some sort. 100 people a week, probably average over 43 years. Now when I put out one episode of a podcast, I exceed that multiply, by what I'm able to share with people in that way. And I just keep doing it because I also get enough feedback that keeps me going. And also, you know what else it does? It helps me meet cool people like Seb here from around the world. I've talked to people in Australia. I got a podcast episode later on with somebody from Nigeria. And that's been a really cool thing to do as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. I have met a lot of cool people podcasting. So since you're a pro and I'm an amateur, What do you say is the secret, or maybe there's more than one, to having a successful podcast? I mean, like, we're not talking Joe Rogan here, or like The Rest is History, or any of those, like, Diary of a CEO successful, but just ordinary, like, successful podcaster guy. Like, how do you actually have like a podcast that's going to catch on and get like, a growing audience? And I mean, I'm not sure how the metrics are, like download count and whatever.
Right.
Like, what's the secret?
Well, first of all, I try not to get too wrapped up in the download counts and that kind of stuff, right? Especially in the first phase of when you're doing podcasts. My encouragement of the people who I teach podcasting is you've got to have kind of some passion project in mind that you feel like that you can talk about or interview people about for 100 episodes. And I just feel like you got to commit to that. You got to get to the average time. The average number of episodes that a podcaster does a podcast is less than 10. I think it's about 8. And what happens is people get into it and they decide, okay, this is a little harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm not making Joe Rogan money right away. This kind of stuff. You just got to have to be passionate about it. You obviously are passionate about people over 60, and that's fantastic. I'm passionate about the cancer thing. I've been 3 years and 130 episodes now doing it on a weekly basis. The biblical thing, I'm passionate about that. 1,200 episodes over 4 years. So just to keep doing it, so there's the passion. Then there is the consistency part. It means it pays off. The payoff becomes then when you start to develop these relationships that can lead you to build a business if that's what you want to do, but it certainly leads you to have a payoff in terms of relationships, fun times, great with other people, and also you can kind of see it as a hobby, as well if you choose to. Now think about this. I bet people who have a hobby of whatever, playing golf or going boating or any number of things that they do. They invest. If you know anybody who plays golf on a regular basis, they invest a fair amount of money on all that kind of stuff, and they just keep doing it because it's fun. And I think there's a level of podcasting that you could say, the hobbyist type of thing. But you got to have a passion to do it. So the passion and the payoff, and then to keep doing it for 100 episodes, something you could talk about for 100 bits of information. That could be 5 minutes or whatever. And you can, now with the AI tools and things like this, that can help you to lay them out. Some people, what am I going to talk about for 100 episodes? Once you get started, you can help, one thing will build in another. And then you start building an audience, you start asking them. What do you want to talk about? That type of thing.
Right. Yeah. So Dr. Brad Miller, you are going to be episode number 47. So I have a lot more episodes to go before I get to even 100. I mean, I do one a week. What's a good number of episodes to be doing? You do like the Bible thing once a day. Is that 7 days a week? I mean, what should people be looking to, like, frequency? Well, consistency, very important, right? But like, what's the frequency?
Well, you got to do what works. I encourage people, and I coach people. I have coaching clients in podcast. I encourage people, you got to figure out what works in your life. In my life, I'm a retired guy who leaned into podcasting is what I'm doing. So I've got a little bit of the time and energy to do that. That's what I want to do, that kind of thing. But, if you're a single mom at home with 2 screaming kids, you may not be able to do an everyday podcast. But you probably should carve out time to do at least bi-monthly, twice a month, and kind of the rhythm. A lot of people who have some success at podcasting is once a week. And so that's what I encourage. If you can get a 15-minute podcast out on a weekly basis, that's a good thing, and be consistent with it. And if you can build from there. But there are people who've done it once a month and they have success. You can find all kinds of things out there. There's some people who have podcasts, go on for 4 or 5 hours. That's not me. I try to do about 45 minutes or so on my interview podcast. Then my daily Bible one is about 10 minutes. That's what I do there. And there's also technical things. AI is one of them, the things you can do. One's called batch recording, where I record all 7 of my Bible podcasts usually in one day. And then I push them out in, through the technology. I'm able to then put them in so they go out on a once a day basis, that type of thing. And that's part of what I teach for people as well. Don't bite off too much more than you could chew, but try to stay consistent.
and build yourself a cool set like I did. So
You've got an awesome set, man. I can see you put some thought and energy and a little bit of money into that thing there. That is awesome. Way to go.
we're looking at $1,000 back here, man. I mean, this thing wasn't cheap.
Man,
So
I can tell.
yeah,
Mine's just my books I've had for years on a bookcase behind me. That's what
well,
I
it looks
got.
cool. It shows that you're smart. This is a bookcase too, but there's no books on it because I'm not that smart. So I feel like I could talk to you forever about all of these things, but podcasting in particular. Tell me more about this conference that you do. Is this only, you said locally? Is this like you have to be local to go to this conference? Or?
Absolutely not. Let me just share how people can get plugged into that if they're interested. I do it once a year. The next one is November 7th of 2026. And what I do is you've got some, like any other field, you've got big conferences, and I go to some of those 3 and 4 day deals in some big hotels somewhere. I do mine at here in my local community. And I do it as a 1 day deal, kind of focus on one topic. And like last year, I brought in an expert on AI, and he spent all day talking about AI, and we had other people who interjected things. So we did an all-day session about AI things. It was great to get insight. He is a professor of technology at Louisiana Tech University, and he flew in from Louisiana to Indianapolis, my hometown, to be a part of that. And this year, I've got a guy who's called the Podcast Answer Man. His name is Cliff Ravenscraft. He's going to be, and he is one of the OGs of podcasting. He's been around about 20 years, and he is very well known in the podcasting space. Look him up, the Podcast Answer Man. You'll find up all about him. And he'll be with us to talk about how to take your life, your business, your podcast, everything you're about to the next level. So like where you're at, you're just kind of starting off 47 episodes. You're not just starting off, you're well into it. 47 episodes in, he's going to be teaching about how to take your podcast, your life, your business to the next level. If you want to make more money, you'll make more money. Gives you strategy. If you want to get more downloads. If you want to take your business, whatever it is, get more clients, it's all about how to go to the next level. So we'll have that on November 7th of 2026. And the website for this is called podindy.com, PODINDY.com. And here's the good thing. It's a live conference, but we have a virtual ticket as well. The whole thing will be live streamed. So it's from 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. It's an all-day event. So the tickets are $37 if you come to a live event, $27 for the virtual event. So we make it very affordable. And so podindy.com if you'd like to participate in this event. And we'll have other speakers as well. But the main focus will be Cliff Ravenscraft. He is the Podcast Answer Man, and is going to be taking your life, your business, your podcast, everything you're about to the next level. I'm super excited about it. We just got the website up last week, and so I would encourage your audience to check it out. Podindy.com. That's PODINDY.com.
All right, that is awesome. I'm bringing up his website right now. I'm going to subscribe to that podcast, and I'm going to buy my ticket. I don't know that I'll be able to make it out there in person. Maybe I will, but I'll certainly get the virtual ticket. I love coming in person. I'm all about like meeting people in person. How many people come to podindy.com? To the actual live events? Is it 50?
Yeah. Well, the live event, we've had about 25 to 35. This will be our 4th year of doing it. But interesting enough, we've had 25 to 35 in the live event. We've had about the same number on our virtual event. And then everybody who buys a ticket, whether it's in person or virtual, gets all the recordings. So we've had people take advantage of that as well. But, of that 35 people come in, they've come in from about 5 different states. They've traveled in from all around. And on the virtual ticket, I've had people come from all over the country for this. And it's a growing endeavor. And so love to have you come or participate in the virtual way in your audience. And we're here to be helpful. The idea is to help. There are a lot of events are kind of pricey and you got to travel far. The idea, we made it, original idea was to be just for kind of Indianapolis area people. That's what we call it, Pod Indy. But we found out it had a bigger appeal than that. And so we've opened it up to anybody who wants to come can come. We never limited it for that matter. But originally it was just kind of our local thing we were doing here. And then we found that a lot of people are checking it out. And we've been fortunate every year, the last 3 years, we've had nationally recognized experts come in to lead it. Like last year, we had Dr. Craig Van Slyke, who came in to lead us on AI. And he has a podcast called AI Goes to College, very popular in AI space. And so he teaches AI at the college level, and he helped lead us in that. 2 years ago, we had the School of Podcasting's Dave Jackson led us in a similar way and took us all about how to build a business out of your podcast. All those, by the way, all those tapes are available for the past ones as well. And so we have really focused on trying to make it affordable, relatable, and kind of focus on one area for a full day to help people to get that. And also a lot of fun. We have a free pizza party and have that kind of thing going on as well. So podindy.com if people want to check it out.
Yeah, I've never been to Indianapolis before, and I guess this is a little ways out. How far out of town is this event?
Well, it is a suburb that's about maybe from the Indianapolis airport about 20 miles, but outside the city, outside of the city limits of Indianapolis, about 5 miles outside the city limits. It's an affluent suburb of Indianapolis, is where it's a community called Whiteland, Indiana.
Well, here downtown Indianapolis is really cool, like with the stadium and all that, where the Colts play. I mean, I've heard it's pretty sweet.
It is, and we certainly make. We don't have this at a hotel. We have it at a church, but we help people to understand about all the other amenities that are going around town. There's lots of things to do around Indianapolis. And possibly our football team, Indiana University, might be playing playing around then too, so as well. So. Yeah, all right. People come check it out. Love it.
All right. Well, I'm glad you shared about that. I've never been to Indiana. I've only been to half the states, and Indiana is one of the ones I've not been to. But I hear Indianapolis is a nice place.
Seb, love to have you. Seb, one more thing I'd really like to share with your audience before we go is has to do with the Cancer and Comedy, and I have a free gift to offer your guest.
Awesome.
If any of your guests are interested in the whole area of this therapeutic humor or the cancer and comedy area, it doesn't have to be cancer itself. We kind of play in this area where people deal with adversity. We kind of say that cancer, anything that eats you alive, it can be, like we said earlier, divorce or depression, things like that. We think it can be helpful. But if anybody wants to have a taste of what we're all about, you just head over to our website, cancerandcomedy.com/free. That's cancerandcomedy.com/free. And you're going to get a free private podcast, which is a 5-session audio podcast that has to do with what we call the Healing with Hope and Humor process, which is basically what I outlined earlier, but it goes a little deeper on each of those ACTS points that we made earlier. So I would love to invite you and your audience to check out cancerandcomedy.com/free.
All right, very good. I just checked it out. I don't even have to register. I could just click on it and just start listening.
You can. Absolutely.
You are too nice. You are too nice. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. And, they say laughter is the best medicine. And, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm nobody really. But I think there's a lot to that mind-body medicine. I think that, like what goes on in your head really does dictate to a large extent, like your physiology and having a good attitude and being upbeat and getting out of that crushed spirit state. Because if you have a crushed spirit, I think you're done for, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know what can help you, but like if you can get past that, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, you're definitely going to have a much better chance of overcoming your physical ailment. And I love to laugh. That's why I have this uncensored thing, right? I try to have, I try to have fun, right?
Absolutely.
I don't always succeed, but I try to have fun. Listen, Brad, I am so thankful for you making the time to be here on 60 Plus Uncensored. It has been great having you, and I will get my ticket, and maybe I'll come out in person, but I'll definitely, can I get the archive versions? Like if I buy the $27 ticket, do I get the past years already, or how do I get the past years too?
Well, you just reach out to me. Well, I'll make sure that it happens. But that's a good idea. I may have to do a whole subset on that.
You should like have like a super version of it for an extra $10 you get, or 20 or whatever you get the rest of the recordings, because I love podcasting. I just think it's great, and I do want to be consistent with this, and I have been, and like it comes out every Wednesday at 5 a.m. Pacific time, right? I mean, like I have a VA who like does a lot of the grunt work for me, does a great job at it. I'm very obligated to him and thankful that he's in my life. Hey Archie, how you doing, man? So I love this. It's fun, and I know that I have a lot to learn from you, and I think that a lot of people would have a lot to learn from you, just in terms of like spirituality, the dealing with cancer, superseding all of that, and going on and finding meaning and serving others in your life. You got an inspirational thing going on. So again, thank you so much for being part of my little podcast.
Well, great. Let me leave you with a dad joke before we go here. You ready for
one? Oh,
please
do. Yeah.
Hey, I used to do the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around. Hey, that's what it's all about, man.
All right. And with that, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I'll catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Dr. Brad Miller for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you liked this episode, do me a favor, do Brad a favor. Hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to know anyone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose like Brad, or aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Living on Facebook. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.